Okay, so now we're going to talk about VS Code and Quarto inside VS Code. If you don't have VS Code up and running, we'll talk about it. There's other things that we can do to get you through this week if you just want to use Jupyter Notebooks. But I'm going to focus on this because it's kind of the main path for most folks in the class. So just let me know though, and we can work through it. So first things first. This is what the Quarto extension looks like. So if I'm inside the VS Code IDE right now. So if you click on the extensions over here, all right, you're going to want to add this Quarto extension. All right, I've already had it enabled, but and then there's documentation here. I'll talk to you about all the things that you can do using this Quarto file. It's pretty good. It's a .qmd file is what they'll end up looking like. This should take just a few moments to install, and then you'll be up and running. And so once you get this extension installed, what you can do is then you should be able to go over to File, New File. That's not what we wanted. That's a text file. Go away. File, New File. And then there should have this Quarto document option. If it doesn't show up, as a default, you can always just search for it, So, and then it'll show up, I'm sure. It may have shown up for mine because I've used it. It's kind of one of those, kind of frequent things. And then this is what it'll look like right out of the get. All right. So that's your basic formatting. Now, what I'm going to show you is an example, and you'll have access to this example. It should be up on the repo, and I'll add it to the class as well. All right. So this is a more populated version. It's the same thing as that basic template that I showed you, just with a lot more content in it. Okay. So between these three dashes up here at the top. Now keep in mind the goal of a Quarto file, it stands for Quarto Markdown, is .qmd, all right, is to blend text and code and images together to generate kind of a final product, all right? And so in order to do that, you have to do some setup in the front, all right? So this is kind of like the header section, all right? It's all this metadata, and we'll talk about exactly what format that's in, a little exercise in class. But here you can see there's options for the title, the author, and then the format. And you're always going to want that format to be HTML, all right? And then these are all options for the HTML formatting, all right? The theme is Cyborg, and so there's a bunch of different themes that you can use, all right? All right, but this is the main, I don't have to walk you through this. Is a table of context, all right? Table of content. Basically, we want to have that, yes, all right. And then we want to do indexing, which means that it'll have more than one section. Smooth scroll means that as we scroll through our document, that index will stay there, all right. That's just a location, and again, the theme. And the key here too, you want this Jupyter output, all right, here. Otherwise, your code won't work. It won't know what language you're using. So you want to type in Jupyter and Python 3, okay. So everybody should be using Python 3, all right. Some people have later versions than others, but anyway, that all should work, okay? And then we're going to just jump right in. So what we have now, right, you'll have a blank document. Anyway, it'll look, I should probably have left that one up here, but it'll look just like this, right? And so what you'll have done is added all of this context up in the front, all right? And I'll just add a little bit here. I'll just add this part of it just to get it up and going so you can take a look. Right? And there's lots of things you can do with the HTML. You have to adjust that, but and so you can start to add content in right away, right? So this is just guessing that I want an introduction, and as you see that, there'll be kind of an outline that starts to build over here on the left, okay, inside this particular document, all right. And if you want to add code, all right, the way that you do it in here is we're going to add a Python chunk right here. It's guessing that it's R, but it's not. All right. So we're just going to type in Python. That's it. All right. And then we'll see, because we have that Jupyter version of Python 3, we get kind of this chunk effect. All right. So we can put code in here. All right. So we can start to put in any type of code that you want. If we wanted to, let's see, I'll just do some import libraries, right? So let's just import some libraries. We'll do pandas. We'll do NumPy. All right. It's just guessing again what I want. All right. And then we can run it. And what you'll see is you'll get this interactive window over here, all right? It'll stand up your kernel down here on the bottom, your whatever Python kernel you have. And then, it runs just like Jupyter notebooks do. All right, so it's basically connecting to the kernel. All right, and so we're here. It's waiting to execute that code, connecting to the base. We'll just wait a few minutes while it connects, a few moments. Probably should have done this ahead of time. Taking a little longer than I thought. All right, there we go. So now we're up and running, and it'll give it kind of a status over here, which is kind of nice. You can kind of see on both sides, what's going on instead of it all being embedded in one notebook. It could be kind of an update. Again, it's just getting started. It's taking there a little longer than we would have expected. All right, but then you're up and running. All right, and so here I'll go back to. Sorry, switch back and forth. I'll go back to the bigger example. What we're doing is this is just an overview of a project. It was done by a student from last semester. She did a really great job kind of building this out. So I'm using it as a template. I modified it a bit for our purposes, but here what we see is a bunch of text, all right, which is the nice part of again these markdown files, right? So you can weave in text and code. And here this is a link, all right, and I'll show you how that renders. So all of this formatting with this blocks and these parentheticals with the web link in it, that's all markdown syntax. All right, so there's a format to that, just like this one down here, markdown syntax. And what it's going to do is just render it's just going to render a link. All right, that's going to convert this text into HTML. All right, and it's just going to look like using Python and Quarto. It's going to be blue, and that's going to be a hyperlink. Okay. All right. So the other thing to know about these chunks, all right, and these are chunks of code, just like they are in Jupyter notebooks, all right, is that you can set them up and they can run them in different ways. So here, as an example, and there's maybe 15 of these little tags that you can put inside the chunk here. So we're saying, hey, we want this to be a Python chunk. And we're saying not to include this in the output. So what that means is it's going to run it. It's going to run this code, but it's not going to print it out because we don't really want in our final document. We don't need to show everybody, this all the packages that we imported. All right, that's not necessarily something we need to show. And maybe we do. We could include it and then kind of fold it, so it doesn't print out. But for our purposes, I'm just going to say that we don't need to show all these packages. Okay, so we're going to hide that. And this is true too, all right? So here, echo false means that it don't show the code, all right? So it wants to show the output, but echo is specifically related to the code inside the chunk. So it's going to show the output here, but it's not going to show the code. And this is saying, hey, if we have any warning messages, don't show those, all right? And so there's a series of these. I've just used just a couple, okay? All right. And so if we run this, just as an example, all right? So what we're doing here, oh, I gotta import my libraries. Let's get rid of that one. Don't want to save that. All right. And go to interactive presentation. We're over here. It's just on a different tab. So let me scroll down. I'll show you what some of this looks like here. Okay. So on this one, this is the one I ran right here. All right. In this line of code. Okay. And again, here goes our outline. Pretty nice outline, right? So right now we're in section charts and images, and I'll talk a little bit about how we got these sections. And it just ran this line of code, and it outputted this interactive HTML table, okay? And so instead of printing all the code, all right, it's just printing the table. And so when we compile it all together, we won't see all this code. We'll just see this kind of nice interactive table, and I'll show you what that looks like. I probably should have started with a little bit of overview of indexing. All right, so what we're going to use these hashtags here, all right, as basically like a table of contents. You can think about it that way as indentations. All right, so one hashtag here is going to be the highest level. All right, so we see this as introduction, right? And then if we were to go to, all right, this is a random image here, okay? And that random image gets pushed underneath the charts and images top. All right, so it's just that simple, So this is the highest level, this is the second indentation, and then it just shows up here on the side as such. And this actually is going to build our table of contents. All right, so the table of contents will show charts and images, and then underneath that it'll show a random image and another image, but in a code chunk. All right, so that's how we build out the table of contents using these hashtags. All right. This is just an image, okay, that we've put in between two code chunks. And again, this syntax here is just markdown syntax that we've just embedded. And so this image is bd.png, all right, is in our, right here, right? It's in our uh, working directory, and so we don't have to tell it exactly where to go. We just know it's in our working directory, right? And so this file can find that and then include it, all right, in the document, all right. And I think it's this one here. Maybe it's this one. It's one of these two. One of these two. Anyway, I'll show it to you when we print it out. But it is one of these images that shows just kind of in between the chunks, and this one, okay, as the social media app one here. So you can control it. All right. This is a way to control it inside the chunk. By it, I mean the image. All right. So here we've changed the scale of the image, made it a little bit smaller because this is pretty big and this fits a little bit better. All right. So that will control the output of the size of the data of that particular image. I'm sorry. Okay. So there's a lot more to get into. We're going to get into a bunch of it in class. Another example is this panel tab set. What this does is going to create tabs. All right, so tabs that are kind of right next to each other, horizontal, right next to each other. So you can click in and out instead of having these two sections be vertical. So those show up as discussion and conclusion right next to each other. And then when you just have to start it with these three colons, and then when you want to end it, you end it with these three colons here, and that stops the tab setting. All right. This is just another example of just a figure that we developed, inside a code chunk. It's going to show kind of all these different. Oh, I think it was this one here actually, all the different cylinder ratings based off miles per gallon. The number of cars, I guess, and total miles per gallon. So we're just showing that across the in an interactive chart. It's pretty straightforward. So again, we'll walk through all this in a bit more detail in class, but I just wanted to give you a bit of a sense of it, of what it looks like. And so a key feature of this is this render. Okay, so we have to save our file once we have our front matter up and we feel pretty good about the outline and the content that we've included. What we can do is we can render it. All right, you're just going to want to render to HTML, and this might take a little while. All right, so the system is going to load here. All right, and you see right what's it doing now down here on the side. This is a Quarto preview. All right, so it's pulling this information from the presentation itself. All right, it takes a little while to compile it because it's got to go through all of the code and the libraries and the markdown text and compile that all together in one document. So we'll just give it a second. You can see down here it's giving kind of a status, rendering presentation _ example. All right, now it's starting the kernel. Again, I probably should have done this maybe ahead of time. And what you'll be able to do is that once it's up and running and you have a preview, you can render it multiple times and make small changes and then see what they look like. And it's always going to be faster because what it'll do, it'll cache everything that's not changed kind of automatically. So unless there's some changes, it won't rerun it. So identify where those changes are so it doesn't have to go through and compile the entire document every time. So this first time, it's going to take a little while. It might take a little longer maybe than normal. But then what you'll see is that when you're kind of iterating, you make some small changes and then run it again. It should be much quicker than this first one. All right. So what we'll get if everything's working right is this preview of this document. And again, this is pretty lightweight, right? So what we see here, all right, is the output of our document. So we see our index here on the left. All right, we can click on this. It clicks us all the way down to future work. All right, we can go back up to introductions. These links are hot. They go straight. And they work. I'm not sure why this shouldn't have included this, but I'll double check on that. And then here, what we've got is our. Oh, that's right. I took out code filtering. All right, so I'll talk about that in a little bit. But anyway, so here what we've got is this is our interactive plot. All right, so again, we can click on this, and I'll show you guys how this works a little bit once I push it up. And this is just our random image. Okay, that's the one that's right in here, kind of in the middle, right here. All right, and this is another image that we controlled. All right, the output of it made it a little bit smaller than this one. It's kind of a bit bigger. All right, and these are our tab sets. We've got a figure here. I'm not sure exactly why that's not rendering, but we'll take a look at that too. Not always perfect. And one thing that we can do just to make sure everything's really good and final, this is a good preview, but we can also pop it up using this square here and push that out. And it's hosted locally, which means it's running on our own computer, right? But this is up, up online, so we can take a look and see what it looks like in the browser and see if we're happy with kind of those results, right? Okay, so this is conclusions. This is the figure here. It looks like it rendered, once we pushed it up here. So this is just an overview of that data set that we used. It's just a table. And we certainly probably want to get rid of some of this code, and we'll talk about that in class. But this is pretty straightforward, just kind of a real quick example of this. But what this allows us to do, and eventually what we can do, all right, let me get rid of this. All right. So we can actually publish some of this. So I'll show you how to do some publications to this in a free web server that Quarto provides. It's pretty straightforward. We'll do that in class. And then we'll have a link we can just share, right, to our documents. We share with our, in the future, if you use this, of course, you can share it with other people. And it's static, so it stays up there kind of forever, which is pretty nice, right? And there's lots of different options to modify this and make it look better, so we can get rid of some of this code, things like that. But that's a straightforward there. I just wanted to get a quick example of using these Quarto files, these .qmd files, in order to render, kind of shareable documents with HTML that look really good. These are pretty high quality here. As you can imagine, there's lots that could be done to make this look better. But even with this simple kind of lightweight markdown text, there's not a whole lot up front here. We can generate pretty professional looking documents. And this is what you'll use for your final. So I just wanted to introduce it right at the beginning. And a lot of people like to use these files throughout the class. If you want to do Quarto files and submit your homeworks these ways, your labs, totally fine with me. Okay, that's it for now.